So, we were talking about this a little bit before. We're actually going to do this slightly differently. You know, in the past, we've had it where we'll do a screening and then sort of a Q&A with the artist, and then open up to questions. But because we're actually going to be doing like a tour, it's sort of like This Is Your Life, right? With Craig Caton.
It's a bunch of, these are just a bunch of like little adventures that kind of happened to me on my journey
on
to
your
get
many,
here.
on the long road to here.
Hopefully they're entertaining and even funny, but we'll find out. So
and if you don't think so, keep it to yourself. All right. So yeah, long and the short of it is like we're open. We want this chance for you guys to learn even more from this man than a lot of you already have. So we'll be opening it up to questions all along the way. We have a microphone that's going to go around. So if you do have a question along the way, don't be shy. Put up a hand, and we'll hand you a microphone. So, hi, Craig.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good.
So what have you been up to?
About 6'4".
Are you 6'4"?
Really bad joke, yeah.
You're 6'4".
Yeah.
Dude, he's even taller than most humans. It's not fair. So we were talking a little bit about how this all began, and I know you even have a great picture of
I have a picture on how it all started. So it all started when I was about 7 or 8 years old, and I saw the movie Planet of the Apes. And I said to myself after seeing this movie, not really realizing what I was thinking, but I saw the movie and I said, hey, I want to be a monkey too. And I wasn't really thinking that through. So that's what I did. I went out and I got this makeup artistry book by a legendary makeup artist, Dick Smith, and I started doing makeup, and this was my first one. I grew up on a cattle ranch up in Washington State, and I took my older sister, who was like this horse whisperer person, so she's like really good with horses, and we went up to my horse. I had this great big horse named Eagle, and we went up to him, and she took her scissors and she cut most of his mane off, and that's what I used for my Planet of the Apes makeup, is horsehair. So that's all my horse, from my horse Eagle. That's him.
Or as I nicknamed him, Bald Eagle.
So yeah, that was where it all started. Yeah,
so how old were you when you made this?
I was in I think I was in the 7th grade.
Okay, so you're like 12?
Yeah, about 11 or 12 at the time, yeah.
And I'll have to admit, okay, so he sent me these pictures, and when I looked at this, I mean, I was like, well, how old is Craig? Because the first Planet of the
really
Apes
old.
Came out in like 67?
67.
Yeah. And so I'm thinking, wait, okay, I thought Craig was a certain age range, and I won't say what it is, just in case, in his mid-30s. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, did he work on the original? Because I looked at this, I could immediately tell this is the original Planet of the Apes. Well, I'm an idiot, because this is not the original Planet of the Apes, though it looks just like it.
Wow, thank you.
This is something a 12-year-old made.
So I was just, all I wanted to do from the time I was in the 6th grade was come down here and make monsters. And so that was my dream, and so that's what I did. So.
As a 12-year-old.
So we move on to another.
Let's move on.
Another story.
Another story.
That's how it all started. I wanted to be a monkey. Okay, let's see if I can get this. All right, so here's this.
This one. So do you guys know who that character is? Not the one to the left with the beard, but the one to the right. Do you guys recognize that?
Yeah.
Arnold?
No, it's Skeletor.
Who said Skeletor?
Right, yeah.
You have a prize, which is
right.
Go outdoors sometimes, because you're as much of a nerd as I am. Yes, Skeletor from He-Man.
This was before the movie. The Mattel Toy Corporation had come up with a line of toys, Skeletor, He-Man, and the Masters of the Universe, and they decided to do like this live-action presentation to all these Mattel toy conferences around the United States, and so they hired some muscle builders and people, and then myself and a couple of other makeup artists, we dressed them up as Skeletor and He-Man and Sheila and Evelyn and Orko, the little, I don't know if you guys remember the little Orko character. I'll talk about him more in a little bit. So like on this particular day, this is not really the story I'm here, but I was running a little bit behind schedule, and I also had to paint this guy's body completely blue, all right? And my wife was with me, and I turn back to her and I say, I hold out a sponge, and I say, could you help? Okay. She was right there. All right, I'm helping, Craig. Well, fantastic. So she jumped right in and volunteered, took all right. So
she's been Mrs. Skeletor ever since.
Yeah. So, man, I got to put this water somewhere else.
I'll keep it out of arm range.
So, this was the little character Orko, all right? And I don't have a picture of the little kid who played him, unfortunately. But what happens was we decided to do a great big premiere at the Hollywood theater, at the Chinese theater. And they had built these like great big rock formation down in front of the screen. And at certain times, all the Skeletor and He-Man and all these people they'd stand up on this thing and they'd do their little bit and stuff. And this little character Orko was going to magically appear. And the way we were going to do it is there was this little rock formation and there was a little kid like 5 years old that was dressed in this Orko costume and he was ducking behind this rock with me. I was on one side and this other guy was on the other side, and they were going to fill the stage with dry ice, and then we would lift him up onto the rocks, and then we would hide, and the dry ice would clear, and ta-da! Orko makes his magical appearance. But unfortunately, the dry ice we were holding him, and all of a sudden he goes limp. And what happened, he had passed out from the dry ice. He ran out of oxygen. So we lifted him up onto the stage, and he's like this rag doll. We're like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? And just as the smoke clears, he comes to, and he doesn't even skip a beat. He does this little bit thing, and it goes on. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But that was the Orko story. Okay.
By the way, 2 stories in, or 3 stories in, 1 animal endangerment story, 1 child endangerment story.
It just gets worse and worse. I should stop.
As we go on, it gets only more illegal. This footage is actually going to be in the trial very soon. And actually, if I could go back.
Oh my gosh, because it does get worse. I saw the next one.
Well, so to go back one step. Between the time you were a kid and then the time you were working professionally, did you go to an art school? Like, how were you?
I went to school to be an X-ray technician.
Of course.
Yeah, I have a degree in applied radiation physics. Comes in really handy for Orko, doesn't it? So
how were you able to get into then this, this sort of world of like makeup and special effects and puppetry?
When I was in college, there was these books. This is before the internet, right? So that's how old I am. And there was these books called Who's Who of America, and they actually had little bios and then sometimes addresses and telephone numbers of famous people. And I found the address and telephone number to a guy named Dick Smith. Now, Dick Smith was famous for creating the makeup for The Exorcist and Little Big Man. And he was kind of like considered the godfather of makeup artists, and he had invented he invented the lipstick applicator and all these other amazing things. He created the color process for makeup that television still uses to this day. Anyway, I found his address. I sent him some pictures, and about 2 weeks later, I get this phone call, and I think it's my roommates pranking me, because it's this guy with this lisp. Hi, Craig. How you doing? This is Dick Smith. I'm like, hello. and geez, I loved your work. I just thought I would talk to you and tell you about it. And so that went from there. But what we did is he said, I want you to do like these 7 different makeups. Like one was an old age makeup, and there was like some other makeups and monster makeups and
like a tryout, basically.
Yeah, well, just for him to like critique. And at that time he was working on a movie called Altered States, and he was doing all these like air bladder makeups on this. So I decided to do like this air bladder head thing. But what I would do is I would do these makeups, and I would send them to him along with a page filled with questions and a blank audio cassette, okay? And then while he was working, he would turn on the cassette and he would answer my questions, but also he would go off on these most amazing tangents. One of the things, he was inventing this brand new makeup called Pax Paint, which they used on Dustin Hoffman and Tootsie to make him into a woman. And so I got that formula before all of Hollywood. Anyway, I did that for like a half year, and he finally said, I see no reason for you not to go to Hollywood. And so I came down here, and he gave me introductions to a number of people, which were Stan Winston and Tom Berman and Rick Baker, who were like the big monster makers of the time.
Right.
So.
And if you don't know those names, please do look them up later. I mean, the list of credits will make your head spin. I mean, this is basically the royalty of effects and makeup work. I mean, Rick Baker is as much of an icon of this world as anyone. Same with
He was one of the very first
Yeah.
ones to get the Academy Award for it as well.
Yeah,
So.
and I'm trying to remember. I might have the story wrong, but I want to say it was like J.J. Abrams or someone like that who recognized Dick Smith.
Yes.
Am I right? Was it J.J. Abrams?
Yeah, was it? Yeah.
And he basically, because the idea too of like Dick Smith when he's walking through an airport, even though he's like kind of a legend, if he's not in
one would
Hollywood,
recognize him.
no one's going to recognize him. But J.J. Abrams did, and
Yeah.
like went up to him, and I want to say they became like pen pals, and he was like a little kid at this point.
I think
and he
so.
sent him something from The Exorcist, or
Yeah.
like,
well, that's what he did. He would send. He was this most generous guy. I like one day I get this package in the mail, and it's these foam latex eyelids from Little Big Man.
the
and I was
Dustin
like, oh,
Hoffman
okay,
film where he
yeah.
played. Well, he played like 100-year-old Native American.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, that's a piece of cinematic history. So that was like your apprenticeship was working for one of the greats.
But I didn't get work with them right away. I got there was a company here in North Hollywood called Makeup Effects Labs, and they said, well, you can come work for us for free. I went, okay. And so I did that for 2 weeks. And what they said, well, just have you sweep the floors and reorganize all the cabinets. So I did that. And 2 weeks later, I was the only person who knew where everything was. That was my secret. So they would go like, hey, get Craig, we don't know where anything is anymore. And that was my job security, is because I was the only person there. So
brilliant.
that's how I got in.
Everyone who has an internship now is going to be like, all right.
Make yourself indisposable,
Right.
indispensable. Yeah.
Oh, very much.
So yeah. Sorry. So then we kind of went on to bigger things after that. We'll talk about. We go on to Ghostbusters now.
Slimer showed up in the new Ghostbusters too, right? The Ghostbusters of which we do not speak.
Yeah.
but-
there's so many movies that I would work on the original, and then I would have a great time, and I would hear that, oh, we're making a sequel, and Ghostbusters was one of those, and I was like, oh, I want to work on Ghostbusters too as well because we had so much fun, and then they moved it up to ILM in San Francisco, and I went, all right. And then you see the movie comes out and go, oh, dodge that bullet. Sorry.
If you've seen Ghostbusters 2, you'll agree.
Okay.
So you were.
All right, so here,
you
if
were
you
the
look really
Slimer.
close, you can here's a little Craigie right down there in the corner. I was the Slimer Ghost's mouth, and so I operated his mouth. And most of the time, I actually was like down here operating the mouth, and I'll go over here. Oh, we'll get to that in a minute. But the thing was, so I had this long pole that I operated the mouth, and we used real food every day to shoot this. So we were using mashed potatoes and gelatin and a lot of breads and some other things, celery. And they would go into his mouth and through his body and then land on my face. And so by the end of the day, I was like pretty putrid from all this because we had really hot lights and rotting food on me. And every day after I was done, I had this totally black puppeteering costume, and I would take it to the cleaners. And the first day it was like $5. Like, here, $5. By like 30-something days later, they were charging $40 because I'm like, oh, we're really tired of this stuff, Craig. Could you just stop?
What are you doing in this costume, man?
But one of the things that we wanted to accomplish with the Slimer Ghost, actually, by the way, his real name is Onion Head. A little trivia for you guys, Onion Head. And he was an homage to John Belushi. John Belushi had passed away, and he was personal friends with Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis, the two writers. And so in preparation for this, we watched a lot of movies like Animal House with John Belushi. There was a really great scene in Animal House with the food fight.
The cafeteria scene,
Yeah, and of course, we looked at that and used that as our inspiration for him here. So that was like the little.
Except you never did the bit of like, what am I now? And he puts an egg in his mouth and I'm a zit, get it? So he never spit out the food though. That feels like a missed opportunity.
Yeah, but one of the things we were trying to do is we were trying to emulate Disney's Squash and Stretch with this ghost, and so I came up with this idea based on old dress hoops. So I kind of like, oh, maybe we can do something there. So I went out and I did this sort of thing. So this is kind of a cross section of Onion Head. And you can see like these bars were like the little dress hoops, and then I had bungee cords that were suspending him. And so he could bounce and stretch. And these little bars were made out of what they call bandit material. And bandit material is the stuff that you see these metal bands that tie big wooden crates together. It's really thin sheet metal. That's what they were. It has great torque, but you can bend it all over the place. And so I had this metal band for the mouth up here, and it came down for this handle, which is I held. But I could twist this handle and get great positions with the mouth. And so those were some of the secrets of Onion Head here. Also then the fact that there were actually 3 onion heads, okay? Here was our hero onion head that we used the most. And then we had the screaming onion head. This is his neutral. We could open this guy at least another foot. We could get him way, way open. And then this one over here is the drinking onion head, and we only used him in one shot. So, and we had a couple of miniature onion heads and stuff that we used for flying around the chandeliers and stuff like that. But these were the 3 main ones. And so that was Ghostbusters. That was one of the stories there.
And, and it's like at the time too, without CG, without computer generated imagery, it's like necessity is the mother of invention. So you had to sort of I assume with almost like every effect, in some ways you have to reinvent part of the wheel.
Oh, we were constantly coming up with new stuff on these shows, and we did stuff that would like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man had this great big head, and it was really, really smooth, and he had this horrible seam from the molds, and we couldn't get rid of the seam. We tried things like liquid helium and freezing it and then grinding them off, and that didn't work, and all kinds of crazy stuff. But what they eventually did for the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is they ended up making 16 different costumes because they couldn't hide the seams. So they would have one costume where all the seams are on his left side, and they'd have another costume where all the seams were on his right side, another costume where they're in the back, and we had 3/4, and we had 16 different components for whatever the shot was. We even had, and then we ran into a shot where we had to shoot him from above. And we're like, criminy, how do we hide these seams? And we didn't. Then nobody noticed, hopefully. So
we're all going back tonight.
I don't.
We'll go on YouTube and look. You can see the seams here. Fail work.
This is also. I don't have a picture of it, but there was these great big monstrous dogs called terror dogs in this movie, and we had built them very quickly in the beginning of the movie, and they had these great big seams along them that where the molds were joined together, and. They didn't take the seams off, and then they decided we had to do this close-up the next morning of Harold Ramis looking into the window of the restaurant while they're doing it, and the terror, and he's like slides down the window. And then we had this big close-up of the terror dog, and they decided like at 6 o'clock the night before that we needed to get rid of the seam on the top of his head, right? Craig, come here and get rid of the seam. Like, okay. And so I'm getting rid of the seam, like with my Dremel tool, and he goes, and I rip out half of his head, like this much. A gigantic hole, right where the close-up is supposed to happen. I totally destroyed this whole thing. So I'm like, oh great, and they're gonna kill me. I lost my job. I'm done. So I sat there with cotton and latex till 4 o'clock in the morning with a hairdryer, and just sat there and built up layer after layer after layer, and got it done. And I repainted it. And they came in the next morning, and I was still there. And they go, hey, that looks really great, Craig. What did you do? I took the seam off. Really good. I took it way off.
So, had no idea.
And his brain with it.
So did you not tell anyone what happened?
Oh, no, they could tell.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't like.
They took pity on you? One question about this. So. I was watching. It was over at the Scoreball Center. They have the Jim Henson exhibit right now, which if you haven't seen it, is amazing. And the idea of being a puppeteer is such a different skill set than someone who actually makes the puppets, makes these creatures. So for yourself, I mean, because you oftentimes are obviously you're not just building them, you're operating them.
Yeah.
So I mean, did you have a background in puppetry or in sort of even acting in terms of the physicality needed to be an effective puppet?
No, I was a high school clown, but that was about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you just, as you went, you figured it out with every project?
I mean, we just kind of developed it as it goes. And one of the things that we were very cognizant of way even back then was the 12 principles of Disney animation and how we could use these 12 principles in puppeteering. And so we were very cognizant of, or at least I was, about that principle, because they just made so much sense.
Right.
So.
Yeah, my wife worked at Disney. I remember they had on one of the walls there a guide to creating a cute baby. You know, like animating cute baby. And it was like an oversized head, you know, and like big eyes and oversized bum, you know, rear. And so it was like these principles that they still use decades later. Even you could still see it in Jack and Incredibles too.
Oh yeah, they're still prevalent. We teach those same principles like every day.
Yeah.
So all right, so we'll move along to something else here. Let's see what happens next. The Star Child.
Please tell me you all know what movie this is from.
Anybody recognize this movie?
Wait, I hear one person who knows.
All right, there was this really, really famous movie.
2001, and also this one's 2010.
Yeah.
The sequel. But 2001 will also be accepted.
This was the unmemorable sequel to 2001.
I'll defend this movie. We'll talk later about that.
All right,
I like 2010.
Once again, this was one of those movies where we had a problem with seams. And you can see
that's
like,
your kryptonite.
See the little rough spots around the edge here. So his head was made with a two-piece mold, and so there was a seam that went all the way around the middle of his body, and it was impossible to get rid of it because, like most monsters, they have lots of wrinkles and scales and stuff. It's really easy to hide seams in there, but when you got like a smooth baby like this, it's almost impossible. So we did everything. We did foam latex, and then we came up across this incredibly great idea. We would make them out of gelatin. Because why not? So
everything goes with Jello.
I made them out of gelatin, and it was really easy to get the seam off, right? Because you just use the hot washcloth. Done. And I painted them up, and we took them to the set, and we were puppeteering them and stuff, and then we broke for lunch. But we had all these big lights on him. And the still photographer, he asked us if he could take a couple of stills, and we said no problem, and as long as you turn off the lights before you go. And he said, oh, okay. And so he took his stills, and then he left, and he didn't turn off the lights. And it just happens that he was also the first one back from lunch. and when he got back, what had happened is the entire left side of the face of the baby had melted and looked like a stroke victim. It was like, oh. And he freaked out. And he turned around and he ran head face into a pillar and knocked himself out. And then we come in.
Karma's a bitch.
We come in and we see this dead guy on the floor and a stroked out baby on our table. And we're like, what happened here? So we found out that was the Starstroke baby.
By the way, I hope in the next commercial for NYFA, we just take the sentence, and we saw a dead guy and a stroked out baby. I think that should be like the opening of our next ad. And by the way, thank you for seeing 2001. The rest of you, please see 2001. Please make a promise to us right now. You'll see it before the next time we see you, and that includes those who have them in the morning. Watch 2001. It's a remarkable piece of cinema, and they often play it on the big screen here in LA. So it is definitely one worth watching. And I like 2010. I actually think it's a surprisingly coherent sequel.
You know, one of my favorite little secrets about 2010 is the spaceship of 2010. It's supposed to be a Russian spaceship, right? And it's called the Leonov, and it's going to Jupiter. If you look at the names of all the cosmonauts and characters in the movie, they're all famous Russian dissidents. They're not Russian heroes. They're like Russian bad guys. And that was a deliberate thing.
Yeah, Cold War days.
Cold War days, yeah, 1980s. So.
As he keeps going, again, guys, if you have any questions about some of the specific things he's going through, please raise your hand, and we'll definitely.
And we'll ignore you. No, sorry.
You shouldn't tell them the subtext. But yeah, obviously, if you have questions along the way, don't be shy.
So I'm going to move on to another favorite here. You'll be like, what the heck is this, Craig?
I know what this is. Do you know what this is? You do?
I do, because I sit right next to him.
What is this? Pray tell, what is this movie?
Oh, the movie. I forgot what the movie.
It's the name of the movie is called The Stuff.
The Stuff.
And it's about
And if you didn't see the stuff, that sin will forgive.
And you
2001's
don't
a
want to
different
see
beast.
it. It's not a good movie.
It's a horror movie with that thing in it. I would argue that is exactly why you
So,
should see a film.
The stuff was this. Somebody went into a cave and found this stuff and said, I bet we can eat this. And he did, and it tasted delicious. So they packaged it up and called it the stuff, and they sold it as yogurt. But what they didn't know, that it was a giant blob monster set upon taking over people's lives. So what we did to play the stuff, the big blob monster, is we started out, we'd take cases and cases of Barbasol shaving cream, and we'd empty them into garbage bags. And we'd have like 5 or 6 great big garbage bags filled up with and this would take like 40 minutes, right? And we just sit there and your fingers really start to itch. And then I would lean down, I got down on the floor on my hands and knees, and we put a blanket over the top of me, and then we covered me with Barbasol shaving cream.
Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying monster.
This is how I'm writing a book, and this is how I got the title of my book. The director, Larry Cohen, who was a very famous Broadway director, he said, okay, I want you to undulate menacingly. How's this? Is this menacing? I'm like, yeah, do it more. Oh, okay. And I did this in mansions, in tanker trucks, every place I could imagine, inside jet planes. And one day I did it in a trunk of a car, and they closed the trunk of the car and forgot about me.
Oh, God.
And I was there for like 20 minutes, like, hello? And they had all broke for lunch.
Oh, my God.
And I was there. And the Barbasol shaving cream was mentholated, so my sinuses got really
God,
great.
Yeah, that stuff smells.
But one of the more interesting things, if that wasn't interesting enough, about this movie is that I got to have my first on-screen cameo part, and so I get to do a death scene. I get to die, right? So an army soldier, I die. I go, I die on the floor, and then the next thing you know, a big army soldier comes in and he crushes my head, and this red stuff comes out, which we don't know. We thought the stuff would come out, but not red dust. But we didn't write the story. So, so we made this fake head of me, and this is one of the very, very first heads at the time in Hollywood that was made with an open mouth. Because it was, it's very hard to get people to volunteer. Hey, let's put stuff on your face and you can do it with your mouth open. So I did that, but man, so we did it. And then this head, they ended up making copies of this, and it's been used in like hundreds of movies. So
your head,
this head. So if you go and you see the original Predator movie, right? And when Arnold's in the very beginning of the movie, Arnold's climbing up in the tree to find the 2 dead helicopter pilots. One of them is me with this head. They thought it was really funny because, see, at the time when we were making Predator, I was taking helicopter lessons, right? And they go, let's put Craig in there because he already has the head. Craig, you died in a helicopter. And if you go to the first season of Game of Thrones, this head is on there with longer hair, without a beard. It's on one of the walls of Game of Thrones. Was the last time I saw a copy of it, but it's been in like a dozen Return of the Living Dead movies, and it's been in a couple. I know it was in like a Harrison Ford movie called Witness or something like that.
It's in Witness?
Yeah.
What part of Witness?
See, what the thing is, the friend that I made this with was a guy named Kenny Myers, all right? Now, Kenny Myers is Harrison Ford's makeup artist, and his wife is his hairstylist. And so, so that's how, And so he had the cast of this up in his studio. And anyway, so that's how my head ended up everywhere.
You should get residuals for all these movies. That's your likeness.
Well, it's a non-speaking part. Like I didn't look into that.
Right.
Okay, here we go. This is probably my best story. All right.
This story's a doozy.
This is me. Okay. So I went to Japan for a month and a half one time to promote this movie called Invaders from Mars. Okay. And so we did public appearances there were 2 of us wearing these costumes, right? And so to give you an idea of this costume, we wore them backwards, okay? So I'm actually not facing the camera in this shot. I'm facing that wall, all right? And you see these big legs coming out the back? I'm actually holding on to ski poles like this. And the costume weighs 175 pounds, okay? And on top of that, there's a backpack on me, and we have a little person on my back so she can operate the mouth. Oops. So she can operate the mouth, and these two little arms up here, all right?
So like Yoda in Empire Strikes Back,
so
basically, on the back.
So we have like 200 pounds, and I was able to go out for like 15 or 20 minutes at a time. Like I said, I grew up on the farm, and I like moved a lot of hay, and I was really strong back then. And so we did this. But okay, so in order to see and to walk forward and stuff, there was a camera in one of his nostrils here, okay? And then attached to my chest was a big Sony Watchman thing. And you know, like there was the screen this big, and then there was that much for the batteries, right? Good back in the day. And then there was a mirror here, and I would look into the mirror and look at the image, and so it was reversed as well. So the image is reversed, and you're looking through this nose, and what it looks like is like you're inside this cave, and you can never get out, no matter how far, no matter how much you walk backwards, you're not getting out of the cave. And not only that, it's like this tunnel vision, right? So I'm always going I'm always like this, to make the nose go like this, right? All right, so, and so like, oh, I'm gonna go to the next, like, there we go. Oh,
look! Boys, cover your eyes, please. You shouldn't be seeing this.
The monster made a Craig. Don't you mean a crap? No, I mean a Craig.
I can see the head.
Okay.
The second Ace Ventura movie, right? The second Ace Ventura.
So this is how we get it. All right, so I'm wearing this costume, okay, and you know, it's like really heavy. And we're really I'm doing really good.
Looking at this.
And I'm in this nightclub section of Tokyo called Shibuya, and Japan I'll get to that. So I'm walking around, okay, and I'm barely out there like for 5 minutes. I still have like 20 minutes to go before I die, and I'm walking around. And I run into a curve or something. I'm bumping my foot into something, and I'm like, "What is a curve?" And I can't see anything, right? So I lift up my foot and I step on whatever this is, right? And I'm like just grinding it into the ground because it's like it's round, and I can't figure out what it is. And you have to remember that I have like 230 pounds, 175-pound monster, 75-pound little person on me. So I've got like about a crushing weight of about 300, 400 pounds on this area. Turns out I had knocked a Japanese mafia guy on his butt, a Yakuza.
What?
And I knocked him on his butt, and then I proceeded to grind his ankle into the ground. And he was pretty pissed off. So, and all of a sudden I'm getting this, and I didn't know this, right? I didn't know that this had happened.
You mean you couldn't tell you're stepping on a Yakuza ankle in that costume?
And here's the thing. So like in Japan at the time, right, and I think it might still be true, the Yakuza, they all dressed the same back then. They all had the 1930s and 40s gangster pinstripe suits, okay? But they all had crew cut side hair, and they all had these wet Michael Jackson curls on the top. And it's really easy to determine these people, right? Really simple. And what it is you watching the Yakuza walk through Tokyo is really kind of interesting because of the respect they get, right? As they walk, people part for them and give them like this 5-foot radius of respect. So as when they walk through crowds, it's like this crowd just parts. So I'm sure when he got to the monster, he thought I would just step aside. I didn't. So my people, like I have my headphones, like, Craig's on, it's time to come in. I just got out here. I'm doing great. No, Craig, you don't understand. It's time to come in. Okay, fine. Walk backwards into, And I get in and they tell me what had happened, right? And that this Yakuza guy was outside the theater that we were in, and he wanted I don't know what he's really mad, and they were really scared. Everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, we've really screwed up now!" And so what they did, they brought in towels and they brought in hair dryers, and I got all toweled off and dried, and then they ran a van up to the back of the theater, just big enough to get the doors open. And then they had me duck down in a group of 6 Japanese people, and we all went as one unit into this van, and we took off. And I still had like 15 days left of doing public appearances, and the entire rest of the time I was in Tokyo, I was just like waiting for like katana swords to come in or something. It was like nerve-wracking, and I was never so happy to be done with a gig in my entire life.
Well, luckily, this monster walking down the streets of Japan wouldn't be very noticeable. So it's not like they could find you. You know?
The other guy, Doug Simpson, he went out one time, and he came out into an alley, and we're going to walk up the alley into the main area, right? And there's this poor little Japanese lady, like 80 years old, carrying a little basket with her groceries in it. She's like, and Doug walks up, he goes, ah! And she drops her groceries and runs up, and the groceries, there's like cans rolling down the street, and you can hear Doug, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And she's just like, ah!
He's not allowed back in Japan, by the way. In fact, I think all of Asia just said, don't, please, just stay where you are,
must
please.
keep him back in the U.S. Yeah.
That's fabulous. That should be your headshot, by the way.
So, that was, okay, now this story can take a little bit of a darker turn.
Also Invaders from Mars?
No, okay, so you see this guy in this picture here? Don't look at him too close. Don't recognize him. So, one of the things that happened here was this guy, we don't know who, I don't even remember his name, and if I did, I wouldn't say it anyway. He took Doug and myself. Now, Doug and I, we're both like 6'3", 6'4", something like that, and we were both like big bodybuilder guys at the time. And he told us we needed to go with him one night. Well, okay, we're going with you. And we got on the subway and went to Tokyo, and then we went up like into this big fancy building, and he proceeded to buy thousands and thousands of dollars worth of pearls. Literally, easily maybe $750,000, $800,000 worth of pearls, because they were super cheap in Japan. But you could only take $10,000 out of the country at the time. And what he did is he hid them in the costumes. And that's how he got them back. And we did not find out. We're in the U.S. or like unpacking the costumes, and like da 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 da. What? and then like 5 minutes later, those are mine, blah blah blah. And we're like, oh, so we were pawns to a little pearl thing happening.
Awesome, you're a diamond smuggler.
He brought us there so we could be like the muscle, and we never knew we were like if someone had pulled a gun on me, I'd be like,
to the judge.
Here. So that was the really weird part of that little story there.
If I could tell you one very quick, very LA thing about this, a good friend of my family's who runs the early education part of our temple acted in this movie. Oh. So the idea, in one day, he brought up a story about Invaders from Mars, and she brought up a story from Invaders from Mars. And I'm like, how is it possible that 2 people in one day bring up this 35-year-old horror film that it wasn't exactly, They Live or The Thing.
They Live?
Yeah, They Live made some money.
I worked on that.
You worked on They Live?
Yeah.
All right. We will talk about They Live after your slideshow, because I have about 20,000 questions about that.
I have no answers for that movie.
No, but the idea that both of you worked on this.
What?
Both of you worked on this movie, and to hear it twice in one day. So I feel a kinship to this. Maybe less so after seeing this image, but...
All right, so let's see what's next in store here. All right, time for Terminator. All right,
now this one I hope more people recognize. If not, really, I got to talk to your teachers and your families, because they didn't educate you right.
People have, what are the two questions I get asked most often is like, how did I get started? And I told you, Planet of the Apes. And then a lot of people have asked me, what was the hardest shot you ever did? This is the shot. His name is Donut Head, for obvious reasons, right? And so I made this puppet, and to understand that he's just a head and shoulders. So the puppet stops right here, right? And so he's a big hand puppet. I have my hand up in the head, and I'm doing this thing. and turning his head. And then there were these 2 poles on his shoulder so that the other operator could come in behind me and operate these poles and make his shoulders go up and down, right? And then the actor, Robert Patrick, had his actual arm in the sleeve so he could put his arm in front of the door and had to like do a reveal like this, okay? And we had to do this just right. We had to get this blue collision beacon through the hole and shining just right. And you'll see that there's this little tiny light right here, right? That was his eye light, and I needed to get that on his eye to keep the eye lit up. So otherwise the eye was looking really dead. But when you have 3 people like myself and this other guy, and you got Robert Patrick, and all 3 of you are trying to get this into this exact same spot, it's almost impossible to do. And you just go like, all right, so here's my end spot, right? And you go, okay, and you miss it. And we got it right on the 4th take.
Wow.
And true to James Cameron's style, he said, "That was perfect. Let's do it again." And we couldn't do it again to save our lives. We got to like 16 takes. We got so far that Jim thought that I didn't know. He thought I forgot what I was doing at some point. So he literally gets this close to my face. It's like in a movie, and he starts yelling at me. He's like, "Do you know what you did? Do you know what you did wrong?" And he's like, "Ah, ah, ah." And I go, yeah, I didn't get the eyes and the highlight and the thing. And he goes like, "Oh, all right, well, don't do it again or I'll kill you." Right. Okay.
I was going to ask you what it's like working with James Cameron, but I guess we just heard that.
Well, I should have brought my list of quotes. It came to the point where we decided to break for lunch and try it after lunch. And that's like the worst thing that can happen at all. Because what happens when you break for lunch, usually in a movie, it's you come back to a new shot. And that gives the lighting people and other people a chance to come back a little bit early from lunch and get a head start on the next shot so that they don't have to rush around. Now, when you have to come back to the same shot, they don't get that time to do it because you just come back to the same shot. Then now they have to rush to set up the next shot. So the person who causes that delay is the littlest person on the crew, which was me that day, and it was really obvious who it was, my hand. So then we broke for lunch, and we were out in Fontana at this old steel mill, and the mud was like this deep, and I'm trudging through the mud, I hate my life, and Jim shows up next to me, and he's like, "Oh, I really gave it to you back there, didn't I?" Now, to be fair, I've worked with Jim before. I worked with Jim back before he was James Cameron. I worked when he was Jim Cameron back on a movie called, oh my gosh, Galaxy of Terror.
Galaxy of Terror. Is that Corman?
Yeah, Corman days.
Roger Corman.
And so he said, "Yeah, I really gave it to you." And I'm like, "Oh, it's okay. I know we're just trying to achieve this vision here." And you did. Jim has an amazing vision. But he said, you're gonna be really proud of this shot because this is the shot that we're going to use on the cover of Cinefex magazine and all these movie posters and stuff like that. And I go, "Okay, yeah, sure." And sure enough, later on, this was the cover of Cinefex. And so I made the cover of Cinefex with this shot, and I was like really happy. So, all right, so that's my Terminator story. It's not the best, but it's a story. Question.
So which take did they end up using? Did they use take 4 or
Yes,
did they use...
it was take 4. And we did like 20-something takes, I forget.
And they ended up using take 4.
Yeah. The most takes I ever did for a movie was in the movie Ghostbusters, there's this ghost that comes out of the subway, real quick shot. And we shot that for 4 days and did like over hundreds of takes on it. And I don't even know which take we used, but we had plenty of time to make this. We had one shot left to do in the movie. And we had like a week to do it. So we're like, "Oh, what should we do to waste time?" And we were doing it in a big cloud tank, right? So it was this big aquarium, and then we would pull that creature backwards, and so then in the end of it, when you'd see it, he looked like he's swimming towards you. But all these tentacles that were made out of fishing lures looked like they were coming at you. And at one point during the deal, this giant like 500-gallon cloud tank, my partner knocked over a bottle of super glue into it, and one drop of super glue in this water turns into 1 million little white particles. And all we had was a little tiny fish aquarium net. So we spent like a day. This is fun.
Showbiz is great.
Anyway, yeah, so that was that. But
Thank you.
some more Terminator stuff.
Yeah.
This was a really nice compliment that James Cameron paid to me because this was actually the very first full-size real Terminator built. Before that, there was just
Terminator 1 or 2?
Terminator 2, yeah.
Okay.
Before, there were like miniatures and half torsos and stuff like this.
Right.
And this one was actually made a complete puppet. And so he got to walk and act. And this was the one that Robert Patrick puts the spear through in the end where he almost kills Arnold. So I want to point out something here real quick. These giant servos here, I'll talk about those in a little bit. But yeah, so that was Terminator. And so let's move on to something else. Oh, look, time for Jurassic Park.
Yes.
So,
And the, oh, am I someone to applaud? That's cool. You can applaud Jurassic Park.
so I'm going to talk
that's
about the
fair.
Raptors first because there's, and I'm going to tell you guys for I'm going to expose for the very first time, I'm going to reveal one of the biggest secrets of the Raptors that nobody knows about, okay? And it's going to be here for the first time.
Luckily, we're not filming, so we're okay. Secret's safe.
Take a look at the teeth here, okay? And remember these teeth, okay? So, and we'll come back to that in a few minutes. So one of the things about this puppet, this is kind of what it looked like, right? So it was more than just an insert head. It went way back here, and it also had the hands on it. And so this puppet ended up weighing about 45, 50 pounds. And if you're trying to hold a puppet like that weighs, it's almost impossible to not hurt yourself after a while. So I had this idea to use a Steadicam. So I went out and rented a Steadicam, and I thought I would, what I did is I built a backpack, and then I mounted the Steadicam off my shoulder so they could like mimic my arm and up into the head of the puppet. Unfortunately, the Steadicam itself was way too big, and so I had to redesign and build one myself, and which is actually quite a big challenge because the spring tension inside these are like garage door springs holding these things up. And the amount of tension is incredible. All right. So that was my first thing, is I made a Steadicam Raptor. So he would just sit there, and I could just take my arm out and stand there, and he would do his thing, and that was great. So that was Steadicam, not a real big deal. But the other thing that he had is I decided that I had this handle for turning his head back and forth and moving him up and down, right? And if you notice, like I can rotate my hand like pretty far this way, right? But I can only rotate like this far this way. So I would never, with my hand alone, I would never be able to turn his head to the right very far. I could get it pretty far. I could probably re-grip it and go like this and get more turning, but then you would see it's like go. So those big servos I talked about earlier, I made power steering for the Raptor. So all I had to do is just move this handle a little bit, and one of those giant servos on my back would run through cables and turn the head for me. And so I had this, so I could just like go, and the head would go and look at me, and I go, and it would look at me this way. And so it had power steering in it, which was like another big secret. But everybody knows about that stuff. This is the big secret. Dun, da, da. And it's actually revealed in a little picture with me in it. So how about that? No. All right, so look at this white thing here that you can barely see. So we had this issue with the Raptors, okay? His lips had this section of scales on it, right? And you could only move I would put lip tabs on him. You can only move his lips up to a certain point where the wrinkles got really weird along the side of his face. The front of his face worked really well. It would compress really well like a horse muzzle, right? But the sides got wacky really fast. But Steven wanted to see lots and lots of teeth. So what I did is I mounted the teeth on this big plate panel that when you open the mouth and open the lips, it would correspondingly lower the teeth. And nobody noticed. So, which is great. So when he's opening his mouth and his lips are going up at the very same time, his teeth are actually going down. And they're timed so that you never see it. So it took like a week or two to get the pulley mechanism to work just right. Also, I put an override on the mechanism so that if we wanted to, we could override the teeth at any time as well. But that's the big secret. Nobody knew about it. And there it is. That's the first time anybody's ever been told about this, is that he had adjustable teeth. All right?
Wow, you lied to us.
I know.
But so
movie
well.
magic,
Well, actually, I wanted to ask you a question about Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
So, Jurassic Park had, besides a genius like yourself, it had Stan Winston, Dennis Muren.
Dennis Muren, yeah.
From Dennis Muren worked on Star Wars.
Yeah,
right?
and Phil Tippett.
Phil Tippett.
The stop motion expert.
Right. And that was my question, because I remember seeing some of the early test footage of Jurassic Park, and if you guys know Ray Harryhausen, and if you don't, please do your homework. Harryhausen, was the guy who behind the Sinbad movies, and he was really the godfather of sort of modern stop motion animation. I think it'd be fair to call him that. And also the reason we have in Monsters Inc. Harryhausen's is the name of the sushi restaurant. And so I remember with this movie they were sort of kind of between two worlds. They were trying stop motion, and was that Phil Tippett's?
Yeah, it was
thing?
Phil Tippett.
And then coming at it from that angle, and then coming at it from Stan Winston's angle of CG.
Puppets, yeah.
Wait, Stan Winston was puppets as well?
We did the puppets.
And then Dennis Muren would do more of the CG.
Yeah, what it was Phil was originally going to do a lot of stop motion scenes, and then two guys up in Industrial Light and Magic had found a way to make a dinosaur come to life, and so they did this amazing shot of this T-Rex just walking through a field. And as he's walking through the field, he interacts with this tree and brushes the tree aside, and it's really cool. And the first day that test footage showed up at Stan Winston's, we looked at it and we said, well, that's it for our jobs. CG is going to take over the world. And then it kind of did for a while. But it's kind of a combination now. But
well, then for yourself, I guess that's the question. Is how did you make sure you weren't, one of these dinosaurs?
I jumped ship.
So, meaning you immediately went into...
Yeah, I know. I had been playing on computers for years before I did this, and I had already animated a little chrome T-Rex hopping around, and and I made a logo for Stan Winston for just a stupid logo, like the Paramount Pictures logo, but with Stan's. And so Stan thought I was a computer genius, which was not true. And so he sees this and he says, wow, we need to do this. And so he gave me $2.5 million, and I went out and bought all these incredibly expensive silicon graphics machines at the time, and I bought software that cost $30,000 a copy at the time, and some film scanners and a bunch of other stuff, and I built this amazing computer lab. And it was open for maybe 2 or 3 days, and then James Cameron came in, and Scott Ross, who was the main guy who ran Industrial Light and Magic, they came in, and that very day Stan Winston and Scott Ross and James Cameron formed a company called Digital Domain. And I was their first employee and also one of the co-founders of the company. And so I'd put all the computers together. So we ran Digital Domain for a couple years, but we're getting away from the story. So, all right.
But this movie is the reason you shifted.
Yeah, so this movie is the reason I shifted from practical to digital.
Okay.
Yeah. So, because I saw it, and I really...
You saw the writing basically...
Yeah,
not,
plus
not just on the wall, but the writing was basically all around you at that point.
I was really into... I really wanted to make what they... At the time, when Jurassic Park came out and they saw the CG stuff, they were calling it the full motion body dinosaurs, meaning you could see all of their bodies and legs moving around. And that was fascinating to me because I really wanted to go into that world and create characters and monsters using CG, and I wanted to be the master of that process too. Not just rubber monsters, but I wanted to do CG as well, and that's kind of what sent me on my way doing that. So, so yeah, there's that. There's some shot.
One of the most famous shots from Jurassic Park.
I'll talk about this shot for a second because this was. Behind me is this stunt head from the movie Alien, okay? This stunt head is 40 years old now.
Want me to grab it?
Yeah, if you want, yeah.
Sure.
So I'm a huge fan of this movie, Alien. And in the end of the movie, the Alien, Sigourney Weaver's running away trying to escape, and she's got Jonesy the cat in a little tiny cat carrier. And she goes around the corner, and there's the alien, and she drops the cat carrier and runs away. And they show this really great shot from inside the cat carrier looking up at the alien as the alien is looking down into this cat carrier. And the alien is doing this thing where it's looking in it, and it's twisting its head like this. And when it twisted its head like that, to me, I was like, oh man, that monster's really smart. He's really cool. And I thought, so I said to my guys on this shot, hey, let's do the shot from Alien where the alien tilts his head like this. And my two guys, there was a guy operating the jaw and a guy operating the eyes and the radios. And they both said, yeah, let's do that. So we did it. And so I'm in there and I'm in the porthole and I'm turning the head and some guy in the back goes, "You're tilting the head." And then Steven Spielberg yells out, "It's like Alien, I love it." And that was the best ever. I was like, yeah. So Steven got it. He totally got it right off the get-go. So there's that shot.
Oh, and he asked a question about the breath.
It was a steam machine. It was like a steam machine you use for clothing. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times we'd use dust-off cans turned upside down.
Just from inside?
Yeah, like the ozone or the whatever you call it, the Freon. Like when the predators take off their tubes, that's just a can of dust-off we used. So and Peter Hall was inside. We were freezing his neck like crazy. It was really cold.
Yeah, we got a question right there.
Yeah, sensor controlled some of the raptors. There's a famous scene where basically when the raptor's coming into that scene, you can see the hand pushing the raptor down.
That is Patrick Stern's hand, yes.
Not his hand.
Not my hand, yeah.
Okay, were you manning that raptor there or no?
No, I had nothing to do with that particular raptor, except I did build the head mechanics for it, but that was actually a guy named John Rosengrant in a suit, okay? And let me go back for a second because this is really funny. Look at how he has to be on his tiptoes in this suit, okay? Oh. So he has to stand on his tiptoes in this suit and walk around like this, right? And we decided to help him out. We gave him stilettos to help him out. You know how guys are with stilettos? Not good. We suck at stiletto heels. So literally imagine when you see that shot, the very next frame where we cut, John does the splits and falls on the floor. Oh. And so that's why they cut so soon. And also that's why Patrick Stern's got his hand on him, steadying him to keep him from doing the splits before he gets through the door. So that was the famous scene.
Well, do you have, if I can piggyback on that, do you have any like famous moments where like your arm or your body, your hair, something got into a shot it wasn't supposed to and it stayed in the final cut?
Oh, wow. Yeah, there's lots of... there's some incredible. I can't. And I'm blank to think of it. But I was like, oh yeah, there I am.
You could show your kids. See, Daddy was in this film.
Oh, you mean like this shot?
Yes.
When you see this shot in the theater, or when you see the shot, right? Like, see this big hump back here? So either this is something really wrong, or this raptor's part camel. What they did is they just had me stand, and it was stage 27 at Universal, and they just had me stand in the middle of an empty stage with my raptor, and we put Muldoon, the character, in front of me just like this, right? And then they brought in plants and planters, and they dressed the jungle around us. So we were in a blank stage, and by the time we were done, they had created this jungle around Muldoon and me, and all I had to do was stick my hand out there, right? But my head was in the shot. So they decided to take a camouflage net and put it over my head to hide my head. But so if you know how to look, and at some point you'll see in like 1 or 2 frames, you'll see like a little tiny glint. It's my glasses sticking through the net and shining off the lights. But yeah, so it's the camel raptor scene here. So
I think that'll be in the next Jurassic Park. They're doing more hybrids.
Well, and look at see, and you can see where his lips here are like almost fully compressed in the upper position, and see how beautiful they look because there's not like weird wrinkles, and we got all this great mouth here. I'm just saying that. So, it was a lot of work. All right, I'm going to talk about how we came up with the design, how we created the T-Rex, because this is a great story. This is one of my favorite stories. Our first idea for the T-Rex was a Macy's parade float. We were gonna do like a big giant floating T-Rex, and you can imagine, if he like got loose, like up there in the sky, it's a bird, it's a T-Rex. And you think it's kind of I thought it was like, this is a stupid idea, but it really wasn't, because they'd actually done something like this before. at Universal Studios. They had done this giant King Kong attraction. And believe it or not, this King Kong is just a giant inflatable balloon. He has mechanics in him, but at the bottom of the stage were these giant fans that they would turn on to inflate him every day. And they'd also put banana scent in those fans. So when the tram go through there, he'd like do his thing, right? And you would smell bananas and he'd go through. And so he was a big inflatable. So it wasn't really a bad idea. It's just I didn't like it because it didn't float with me. And okay, sorry.
That was worthy of holding for laughter. I think.
Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I mean, this attraction burned down at one time in a fire. But we did get the cool Peter Jackson one to replace
Yeah,
it,
now
so
they have
that was pretty
the
neat.
one where it's video. It's like CG. But yeah,
Yeah.
this was a staple of Universal for years.
So that was our first idea.
Yeah.
So the second idea was also based off of a Universal Studios attraction. It was called Fievel Goes West. And that's actually a full-size human in that little mouse costume, right? So that's like a giant mouse back there. And how they made this was that this giant mouse was on a teeter-totter, all right, with counterweight. So he's kind of like on this crane. So he would be below the stage, and then at some point they would lift him up and they would teeter-totter him around, and he would float and catch the guy, and that was how they did it. And I really didn't like that idea either. It was kind of like, it was just, should I say some bad puns? I never got leverage with it. No, sorry. Sorry. So then we had another great idea. We thought, let's go and let's dress a backhoe or a crane up, and they get into a dinosaur T-Rex, and I'm like, right from the get-go, I'm like, oh my god. So we go to equipment rental places, and we're looking at this stuff, and you can like look across the street and see this stuff, right? They have these big things. They would go like, and this little thing, we actually have a real name for it in Monster Biz. We call it Wagga Wagga. So it's like Wagga Wagga, Wagga Wagga, and it's really hard to get rid of. And it's almost, so we were thinking like maybe if we put like giant garage door springs to tension them and stuff. Mm-hmm. But I just never really dug the idea. Okay.
He actually works on this material midnights at Flappers in Burbank, the 1 a.m. slot.
He was there with me. No, okay, so
7 drink minimum for those.
So I'm a helicopter pilot, and so I like to go fly helicopters. And me, hi Craig, hello Craig, get back to work. Okay, sorry. And I decided to take a weekend off and go to this international helicopter convention that they have in Anaheim every year. And so I just went down to Anaheim so I could just spend the whole day looking at helicopters because helicopters. But while I was there, relaxing and having my mind totally off of anything Jurassic Park, I saw this. I saw this flight simulator. And I went, oh my gosh, here's this flight simulator, and it's moving 9,000 pounds in such a graceful flight, organic pattern. And I immediately got it. I'm like, oh, this is it. We will do this. And I went back to Steven Spielberg in the stand next Monday, and I said, we want to use flight simulator technology. I want to use the flight simulator technology, and I also want to use the technology that they have inside the dinosaur itself. Like, so using this technology to make the arms and the jaws and everything else work. And they immediately got it. They said, yep, that's the way to do it, right? So we called this company here in Santa Fe Springs called McFadden Engineering, and they went, right. Because they had been called by movie companies before, and none of them ever worked. And then Steven Spielberg got on the phone. They said, okay, we're in business. So that's how we built it. So we built the T-Rex, and if you look down here, like you can see this little motion base. And I'm going to go back here. So in researching this stuff, half the battle of when you build something like this is trying to come up with a way to control it. a nice organic way. So we made this prototype controller here, right? So it's just a miniature version of the flight base, right? And then you can imagine like the dinosaur mounted on top of here. And these are little potentiometers, and we could like move this around and we could drive the dinosaur, and it worked to get those body motions and stuff like that. And it worked pretty well, but we also noticed that when it was so small like this, that it was like, there was a lot of like little jostling and stuff like that. So we made a really big one. We made a big one that required 2 people to operate it. But because we made it so big, it actually had mass and weight to it. So it actually helped us puppeteer this dinosaur in a more realistic fashion. All right, so that was kind of how we did that. And no one's ever seen this before outside of here today either. So this is the first time I've ever shown this to the public. And when you're making monster movies, there's a lot of times like where you're playing mad scientist, right? And people ask you to do things and you have no clue what to do. And this is one of those cases. I needed to learn how to make circuit boards for this movie. And so I learned how to make circuit boards, and this is one of them. And a little funny thing that happened later is like, one of the cool things about working with Stan Winston is he wanted dual everything. We had to have multiples of everything, right? And so I made multiple circuit boards, and then when we got rid of them, I accidentally left some in my garage. And this flight simulator went on to True Lies, with James Cameron's movie True Lies. And they used it for the Harrier up on top of the building. It was the exact same. And they got like halfway through the production, and they're calling me like, we have absolutely no idea how to connect this flight simulator to the computer.
You got it?
So I said, I know how. And they said, how? And I said, yeah, it's going to take like 2 or 3 days and about $5,000. Go to the garage. 2 days later, here you go, check for $5,000. And I got a consulting credit too.
That's right, you have a credit on True Lies.
So, beating the system. So, so this is my parrot that I used to have. People ask me what was my inspiration. The only words that Steven gave us at all for the raptors and for the spitter dinosaurs is he wanted bird-like motions. That was it. Bird-like motions. And that was really our only guidance. And now, so I'd had this parrot for like 20-something years, and I watched him every day. His name is Pepper. And the second guy in command, Jeff, the other mechanic, he also had like macaws and stuff. And so we both basically just based the raptors and the spitters movements off of these couple of parrots. And so if you go look at a parrot, you'll see how it like looks with one eye and all that stuff. You're going to see raptors. And if you want to see something really interesting, go watch baby African greys before they can fly. Like they have like little batches of like 5 or 6 of them, and you see them playing with each other, and it's like watching raptors attack each other with these claws and stuff. It's really brutal, and they're having fun. So.
Until one of them doesn't have fun.
Yeah. He calls the mommy. All right, E.T. So, I'm sitting on set in Jurassic Park one day, minding my own business. And this amazingly beautiful lady comes walking in, and I'm like, oh, I'm 30 at that time.
And married.
I have an excuse. I know. And she goes to walk in, she goes straight up to Spielberg, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And I'm just minding my own business, and then they're both like talking and looking at me, and I'm going, what the hell? Why? And then I turn around, and she's right there. And she says, could you come with me? I have someone I want you to meet. Okay. So we walk all the way across Universal Studios, and she won't tell me what it is, right? And it's like, yeah, and she's like making like, oh, you're in trouble, yeah, like I'm going to go see lawyers or something, like I spilled the beans on the storyline or something, right? And we go into Amblin, and on the ground is this giant wooden crate. It's an identical wooden crate to the one that the Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Covenant, is in, and that's because it's made by the same company here in Los Angeles. And so she hands me a screwdriver and has me undo the lid, and I open up the lid, and inside is E.T., the extraterrestrial. And his finger light is burned out. And they need to replace it. He says, I'm the guy for the job. So I take E.T. and I'm looking around and I find a replacement light bulb for him. And it took a little bit of doing, but it turned out it was a brake light for a 1977 like Dodge Duster. So for like $4, you could go out and get these brake lights, right? So I did. I went out and I got a brake light, and I made
What was your markup, though? You know,
This is the best part. You think, yeah. Sometimes you play the opposite.
right?
So I replaced the light bulb, and it's really quick, a little slice, put it there, glue it back, get it in, and I give it to him, and she goes, great, how much do you want? And I'm like, $40? And she goes, what? What's going on with you? Because the last person who fixed the light bulb charged $15,000. Yeah. And suddenly I had a new job. From that point out, I took care of E.T. from 1991 or 2 to 2010 when we retired him. And I got to go with E.T. all over the world, to Japan and England and Italy and Australia, shooting E.T. commercials. And there were some really great moments. For most of this time, he lived in my garage in Granada Hills, okay? Now, I had a really crappy garage door. It was like, you could like, and it would fall apart. And here's $1 million prop in there, right? So one night...
What's your address?
I moved from there. One night, I was getting ready to take him to New York for something, and for a Wendy's commercial, and yeah, and actually that's a good story too. And it's raining outside, and I have the garage door. The door is like barely open because I don't want anybody on the street to drive by and see E.T. the extraterrestrial in there. And I'm giving him a new paint job. Now the paint I'm using is like the most toxic paint in the world. It's made of hexane and methylene chloride and acetone and a bunch of other really nasty things, right? And of course, I'm in there with my respirator and all that stuff and fans and spray painting it. And the fumes are going outside, and my next door neighbors believe that I am running a crack shop. So at one point, open up, it's the police. And I open up the door, and there's these two cops with their guns drawn on me. And the one cop goes, is that E.T.? I go, yeah. And so we have a good laugh. And then one cop goes back at home, one policeman, he goes back home and he gets his kids and he brings them back and we take pictures.
And all the local crack users came to your house.
Yeah,
Yo, man, I heard you.
We had some great stuff. We saw it. We smelled the fumes.
Your stuff must be great, man. I see E.T. in there.
But yeah, we did. We did some stuff like we did stuff. Like I had to take him to New York 3 weeks after 9/11, and his arm is we store it in a high-powered rifle case. Okay. And I have a Polaroid picture on the outside of the case because I've done a lot of shipping, and that way, like, this is what's inside E.T.'s arm. And I get to New York, and my case is surrounded by like 4 or 5 security guys from the airport, and they're asking me, so is this a rifle? I go, no. And they go, so what do you got in the case? And I'm not thinking at all, I have an arm in the case. And they're going, what? I go, I have an arm in the case. And I go, I mean, it's a puppet arm. We were like, and so we have to open up, oh, it's E.T., yeah, pictures again.
With their shotguns and rifles.
Yeah.
Selfie with E.T.
There's a small funny story. Did we have time? Yeah, we got a little bit of time. On the plane, when I was flying to New York, I accidentally ended up sitting next to the agent for all of the Sopranos. He was their agent, and the Sopranos that was the first year that they swept the Emmys. They took everything home. So this guy's on the plane. I'm the agent for the Emmys and blah blah, and the Sopranos, they're mine. Blah 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 blah. What do you do? I go, I'll take care of E.T. for Spielberg, and they go, yeah, right. Doesn't believe me, right? And so, and he doesn't believe me. because like who would be taking care of E.T. for Steven, right? And so the next day, I end up Silver Cup Studios, which turns out it's the same studios they shoot Sopranos in. And so I got E.T. in this big case, and I'm wheeling him in through the front door, and lo and behold, right in the front door is that agent along with like 3 or 4 of the Sopranos actors, and he goes, "You weren't lying?" He's like, "No, this is E.T." And so at some point in the day, all of the actors from Sopranos came up and had their picture taken with E.T. And
Please, do you have a copy of Tony Soprano and E.T.?
no, but Steven's got one on his like wall over there. So
That's a keeper.
but one of the things I did while I was I became Steve. So I took care of E.T. for years, and I was called we weren't allowed to call E.T. a puppet or a prop or anything. We always had to refer to him as a living, breathing entity. And Barbara was E.T.'s mom, and I was E.T.'s doctor, and eventually we became E.T.'s mom and dad, which was awkward. And
Even now, you're still calling E.T. him.
yeah,
Like I
know,
noticed,
it's
like you didn't call him it one time.
And but one of the things that ended up happening is that Steven has this like giant warehouse filled with props from his movies, and most of them are broken. And so over the years, I fixed them for him. I became a conservator for Steven. And so like one of the things, like this was like the little quarter scale bicycle. And we had it up on display in the Science Fiction Museum in Seattle for a number of years. And when they shipped it back, the bicycle basket broke, and he did a face plant against the case. And he ended up messing up his head real good.
Oh.
And so this was an example of how I would fix E.T. up. This was like a before thing, and you know his little basket had split, and so we all had to be sanded.
It's just so sad.
Take care of E.T. Poor little guy. Yeah. Oh no!
Oh no!
Poor
Let's
guy.
zoom out.
So I did that for years and years, and I fixed all kinds of stuff, like I fixed dinosaur displays and stuff for Steven, and I became like this ET specialist. One time, somebody decided to sell this plaster bust of ET at Sotheby's, whether it was the auction house.
Yeah.
And the ambulance saw it, and they sent me down to verify whether it was real, because if it was one of the real ones, then it wouldn't be their property; it would belong to Steven. Turned out it was one of the heads from E.T. the Ride at Universal Studios, which Steven still owned. So anyway.
Did you take it back?
But yeah, they did. They took it back.
You were the muscle.
No.
I'm here for ET.
I was basically the narc.
Just give back ET, no problems.
So, but what happened was a number of years later, some other people were working on Jon Favreau movie and called Cowboys versus Aliens.
Yeah.
Okay. And one of the two writers had gotten this amazing little statue of Daniel Craig on his horse, but somebody had knocked it off, and it had broken into like billions of little pieces. And he was just absolutely positive, certain beyond belief that it could never be fixed and restored back to its normal. And I'll show you kind of what some of the forensics were here. So it was like a broken finger. See this little piece there? That's a staple from a stapler. That's how small this is, okay? And so, you know, fixing stuff, and there was his arms were broken, there was his arm was broken there, and all the stuff. His ear had to be remade. But in the end, I was able to put him back together, and you really don't see, he was completely seamless. You don't see any of the stuff. You don't see it in the ear. And I even built a little corral for him so that he couldn't be knocked over again, because I did not want to do this again. And I gave it to him, and he was like so amazed that it could be restored. And as a lot of my students will tell you, I love to surprise them with things and stuff. And so he said, "How much do I owe you?" And I said, "Nothing. I did it for free just to prove that I could do it." And he goes, "What?" And then I noticed on his desk there was a copy of this book of my favorite science fiction novel series I was reading at the time. It was called The Expanse. And it was the first book in the series called Leviathan Wakes, and I was like in love with this series. Even George Martin loves these series. Mm-hmm. And I went, "Oh my gosh, that's my favorite. Are you guys going to turn that into a movie? He says, no, not yet. I'm one of the 2 authors that wrote the book. I went, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I love your book. You know, this is free. I'm going. You get it for free. And he said, he told me, I'm on air. I'm like, no, just take it. And he says, well, I'll make you a character in the book. I went, what? And that was like 7 years ago, right? Well, 2 or 3 months ago, his latest book in the series came out, and the very first character in the book is me, is Caton. So it talks about Caton going through the book. And so that's where sometimes good deeds and surprises will pay off for you, all right? And that's pretty much all I have to say. Questions?
Wow. Well, Sandra, we have a few more minutes here, right? So yeah, I just we have maybe about 10 minutes. So definitely, I mean, obviously, we're listening to these stories and we're like, okay, we don't want to interrupt the stories because they're awesome. But you might have questions now. So we have about 10 minutes here. So don't be shy, guys. Ask away. You got one of the legends here.
Will they ever make it a movie?
They
book
did.
series.
Oh, the Expanse?
The book?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, it just finished its 3rd season on Sci-Fi. Sci-Fi
it's a
canceled
TV
it,
show.
and Amazon just picked it up for a 4th season.
Oh, Amazon? Oh, that's
Yeah.
Brad Pitt's playing him, obviously. Obviously.
Well, the sad thing is, like, they're in their 4th season, so they're still like 4 books away from me. So, and they do a book a season. So if they actually do make it to like the 8th season, I'm in.
Letter writing campaign begins tonight, y'all. We got a question right there.
Are there any stories about Beetlejuice and Batman Returns
Batman
by Tim Burton?
Yeah, I have a Batman Returns story. Wow. Did you know about this? Okay, yeah, so
He's not a plant.
what was Christopher Walken, right? Now, Christopher Walken was like one of the actors in Batman Returns, and he was a big practitioner of something called the Meisner technique, and everybody knows the Meisner technique. And one of the things about the Meisner technique is that you actually have to acknowledge everybody in the room. So when Christopher Walken was acting, we tried to get most of people out of his vision because he would like acknowledge those people, so to speak, with that acting technique. So we're in this scene where Christopher Walken's in this big rubber ducky mobile. And he's been captured, and they're lowering the rubber ducky mobile into a hole into the ground, right? And there's 2 penguins on each side, and I'm controlling the one that's close up, and Christopher and I are having this great little time battling before. He's like poking the penguin, and I'm snapping at him, and it's really fun. But we're not supposed to look at Christopher Walken. And I'm in the bottom of this hole. So he's up here and he's coming down. And I got my little monitor and I'm like, well, my puppet control's doing this thing and look at him. And we finish the shot and I don't realize that Christopher Walken is like here, next to me. And we're still playing. And they've called cut, but we're still like doing, and one of them, Craig, what are you doing? Not looking at Christopher Walken. Oh, hi. And then he wanted to know why we weren't supposed to look at him. And I had to tell him, like, I told us not to look at you. And he went, what? He never heard this, right? So for the rest of the show, he had staring contests with us. So he's like down there on the penguin set, and he's in that great big bird cage. When you see him staring off in the distance, he's having staring contests with the puppeteers.
Awesome.
And we're up there, oh no, he's locked eyes with me. I can't look away, and I can't blink. And then Christopher Walken would just do this. And yeah, you got me.
Craig, you're trying to look away. I've told you, maintain eye contact with me all times.
But it was like this little lost puppy kind of guy because he was all on his own. And when he found out that he thought we were like mad at him or something. And then he became our best friend after that and stuff like that.
You know, I saw him do a show he wrote about Elvis Presley.
Oh wow!
And he played Elvis, which was like it's as if I walked into my own dreams, seeing one icon play another icon, and by the end of it, he's in a 400-pound fat suit with the
yeah.
idea that this is where Elvis is now. No one has ever seen this play, I think, except me and one of my friends.
Oh, my goodness.
That was it, but I love it. I wish you could have seen it.
Scary, though.
Wait, what's that?
Sounds really scary.
It was terrifying, but I loved every second. We have a question over there.
Okay, so you've done How to Train Your Dragon 2 and Jurassic Park, so you've done multiple animals that are either extinct or don't exist. What would you say is a good tip for having to draw or animate them? Like if you have to make them move, what's a good animal to base them off of?
Oh well, I always start out by trying to base everything off of motion from real life, and so when I'm looking at things like dragons and stuff like that, a lot of the times I'm looking at bigger birds of prey like falcons and condors, so I can see what their flight styles because they have much bigger wingspans. But also, I like to look at things like at bats and seeing the way bats crawl because bats actually have a similar physiology to a lot of dragons, or wyvern dragons if you want to make that debate. I basically try to base everything off of real world motion as much as I possibly can. So.
It's even interesting. I remember Gary Rydstrom spoke to our class at SC, and he's a sound designer off Jurassic, and his sound design is like, how do you make the sound of a dinosaur? And it was like a bear and another animal, and then his dog. That sounded like he was 5 pounds, and he's pulling a rope with the dog to create some of that growl.
So the sounds for the raptors came from teenage male dolphins. Okay.
That sounds like a
teenage male dolphins.
What? There's only 2 things that male teenage dolphins are going to be talking about, right? I won't even bother. What if we took an audience of dolphins and we showed them Jurassic Park? It's the raptors coming out to Laura Dern's trying to turn on the power and the raptors coming out, and he's really saying, left knob on the third, or maybe how you doing, baby? Maybe he's trying to pick up line or something. It's not I'm going to eat you. It's more what are you doing after work? You hanging out with the rest of the pod?
That's a heck of a dorsal fin you got there, lady. Yeah. I think I saw the microphone go over there. Hello.
Hi, Craig.
Hi.
I have a question.
What do nerves mean?
No. I will ask you tomorrow. I have seen Jurassic Park and Alien many years ago. For me, the most terrible horror part is when they flipping their lips. The dinosaur flipping their lips, and same as the alien. So how you guys invent the most terrifying element for creature or animals? How to make them more terrible?
It's a lot of trial error, and it's a lot of trying stuff that just doesn't work and looks ridiculous, and you go, okay, we won't do that. One of the ideas early on in the movie, we thought, and you can, if you see this on the Blu-ray, you can actually see us fooling around with this. We thought it would be, one guy thought it would be, it was Phil Tippett. He thought it would be a really cool idea, whenever the raptors, instead of doing the nail clicking, he thought it would be cooler if their tails went straight up in the air like antennas. And then from that point on out, they would walk around. And we're just what is wrong with you? And he had a stop motion. You can see this. It's on the Blu-ray. All right? You can see him doing this. He takes a stop motion puppet. And you can see Steven Spielberg and Dennis Muren and Stan looking and then a second later they cut.
And the tail goes wah wah.
Yeah. And then there's 4 or 5 clips of this in succession because they cut through scenes, right? The next shot you see, Phil's all his hair is all crazy, and I shouldn't be talking about this on film, should I? No.
Well, it's not film.
Oh, okay.
It's video.
Or even video. But fine. Yeah, it's really funny. to see all the stuff that happened and some of the ideas that didn't work.
I think we maybe got time for one more question, Sasha. Two more questions.
Two more questions.
So, no one. Oh, we got a couple up here.
Hi.
Hey.
Why do you love it? What gets you motivated to get out of the bed every morning and just make stuff?
Oh, because I don't have to work for a living. People pay you to make toys and play with them. Do it. Yeah, no, and if you love your job, you'll never work a day in your life. I mean, that's so true. And so that's, and yeah, so and I found a great extension to and I never thought it would be this great, but like really the wonderful thing about it was doing all this stuff and then coming here and being able to instruct people and helping you guys achieve your dreams. That's really awesome to be able to do that now. So that's what I'm doing now, is trying to help other people achieve their dreams, and that makes me super happy. So.
We would end on that because it's so beautiful, but I know we have one more question here.
Okay, I'll try to do something else nice.
Here.
Come up with something else really cool to say. Great.
It's not as cool, but
what's that?
It's probably not as cool or sad, but have you ever worked with or collaborated with Rick Baker?
Oh yeah.
And how was that experience?
Interesting.
Just to give you guys, some background on Rick Baker. He is maybe the most famous kind of makeup.
Stan beat him out eventually.
Stan and Rick
Stan eventually got him. Yeah, but Rick was the start. Yeah.
American Werewolf in London or the video for Thriller, I think, was him.
That was what I worked on, Thriller.
Oh.
Yeah, with Rick. Yeah.
And so, any experiences worth sharing to his question?
It was probably not in public. No. No, Rick was a really great guy. He was very cautious, and so working in the shop was because at the time he was like #1, and everybody was very cognizant of him being #1, and so everybody was just there. Not really on pins and needles, but everybody was just like really trying their hardest to do their best, and so there was kind of a little bit of a stress environment that was there because he'd just won the Oscar, and it was the first Oscar for makeup effects, and so there was kind of a little bit of pressure type for there. But we made Thriller, and then that was that. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, you were saying about, if you love what you do, it doesn't feel like work. Well, no. I guess this is part of my job, but man, this does not feel like work. And and one thing that's so fabulous, getting to know Craig over there. How long you been at NYFA now?
For like 3 or 4 years.
3 or 4, okay. It's like during open houses we have here, like once a month. We'll just sit around and shoot I'd say a certain word, but my kids are in the audience, so shoot the S word. And just like the stories you tell, and you talk about these things like, I worked on Ghostbusters. And it's like somehow you tell your stories and it's never about like, I worked on Ghostbusters, and you just let that stand for a while. Yeah, I worked on Ghostbusters. Never like that. I mean, when you talk about your stories of your career, it's like with the enthusiasm of a kid who just got a toy on Christmas Day.
Well, they are fun, yeah.
Yeah, and toys are good, and you brought some of these toys to life.
I always love hey, you want to hear the story about me being chased by the Yakuza?
And I'm like, yes, I do want to hear the story about you being chased by the Japanese mafia. Yes, please, tell me more. And even and getting to know you a bit over these years too, it's like knowing how you are as a father, as a husband, and even for my sons who are here, he once made a birthday message for one of them as a dragon, as a talking dragon.
Yeah.
I said something about, it's my son's birthday, and he goes, let me make a video for him. And next thing you know, I think it's going to be a little selfie, like, hey, Alex, have a happy birthday. Instead, it's a freaking talking dragon. And I show it to my kid. He's like, yeah, big deal, talking dragon. I'm like, dude.
Like I said, I like to surprise people.
You've been
with goofy nonsense.
Well, you've been surprising millions upon millions of fans for decades and decades. And then also, I'm so glad that a lot of you guys here have him as your department chair, because not only are you a great artist and You do so many different things, but you're also just a great guy.
Thank you.
So most importantly, thank you for being that.
I'm really lucky because I just have the most amazing people working with me. If you really want to succeed in life, surround yourself with people that are better than you so you can learn from them. And I've certainly done that. I have some amazing instructors, and my coordinator, Mar, here is amazing. I've learned so much from my instructor, Kelly, back here. I learned what a good instructor was by what I started here. I had never taught before. I didn't know anything.
Oh, really?
And I saw what Kelly was doing and went, that's what a good teacher does. And so I copied her.
Take notes.
So thank you, Kelly.
All right. And while we're clapping, let's keep the clapping up for the legendary Caton Largent.
Thank you.